big thing with my generation, the millennials, is, going on social media and see people taking trips, and you're like, man, how are they? It seems like they're in Europe every other week. Like, what's going on there? And it's all of those things that pop up. And oftentimes it's just one-off examples, but you see it over and over through your news feed or whatever you're looking at. And it's hard to stay on track and keep that perspective of, well, I'm doing this because I have a greater purpose for my life that I want to serve. And if you hold true to that and you're serving other people, odds are the financial returns will come your way.
Welcome to Men of Abundance, the podcast for those looking to level up their lives by hanging out with some of the greatest leaders and established professionals in our community, living a life of integrity, honor, and the abundance mentality. Prepare to pay it forward with your host, former Army medic turned lifestyle entrepreneur, Wally Carmichael.
What is going on, all of you amazing, abundant leaders out there? I am Wally Carmichael, your founder and host of the Men of Abundance podcast, the Pay It Forward community, proving to you that you can, in fact, live a life of abundance in family, faith, finances, and fitness on your way to having more. And remember, there is absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to have more. When you add more value to others, you always get more back of whatever it is that you're adding out into society and adding to others. So always strive to be more. By being more, then you can give more. And by giving more, you can have more. And listen, don't question it. Just do it. I assure you it works. This is a reality in my life. It has been for many years. That's why I started this whole abundance journey and decided to have conversations with other abundant leaders out there paying it forward and creating more in their own life by creating more around them. But listen to this very closely. I'm a believer in the law of attraction, but I believe so much more in the law of action. So take action today, be abundant in your actions by paying it forward and sharing this conversation and Men of Abundance with others in your circle. Take a screenshot of your cell phone, or if you're listening to this on the computer, then take a picture of it and post that picture on social media, hashtag Men of Abundance. And you know what? Just go ahead and hashtag abundance. Let's just go ahead and own that word, hashtag abundance. Now, I know Peter Diamandis has a hard lock on abundance because he is one of the guys that I started following when I went down this whole abundance journey. By the way, if you've never heard of Peter Diamandis, look up the book called Abundance. If you ever question that there is abundance in the world, look up Peter Diamandis, get on his newsletter. He proves to you with data that there is so much abundance in the world, in resources, in education, in everything. It's just a matter of how it's distributed. I'm not going to get too much into it, but I get super hyped up when I think about this because abundance to me is so much more than a mindset. It is a reality. We have so much abundance in the world, it's ridiculous. You just have to know where it's at and where to get it. That's why I get infuriated when people say things like, well, he's got all the money and he makes all the money in the world. And because somebody's wealthy doesn't mean they have all the money in the world. You can go get your share too. It's not like a finite piece of pie that there's only so many pieces of it. No, it's a pie that keeps on growing, and there's plenty for everybody. You just have to figure out a way to get your share, and it is your share. When you add value to others, then you get duly compensated for that. All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox now, and I'm going to introduce our featured guest today so that we can get into this conversation. But be sure to share this conversation with others. And if you have a few minutes, go over to iTunes, leave a rating and review. It really helps us in the searches when people are looking for these type of conversations, and I assure you, people will thank you for it. Our featured guest today is a husband, podcast host, personal development thought leader, and a data-driven marketing consultant. He hosts the Millennial Mastermind Podcast, a show dedicated to giving entrepreneurial millennials the tools, tactics, and inspiration to turn their dreams into reality. Each week, he interviews successful entrepreneurs, authors, thought leaders, and experts to share their stories and their advice on how to create a life worth living. Brad's own personal development journey was born from a place of frustration and desperation. Like many of us, he found himself at a point in life where he felt he was unfulfilled, undervalued, and underpaid. Worse yet, he knew that there was a wealth of unmet potential deep inside himself. It was at that point that he had decided to take a stand and make a change. That's where the Millennial Mastermind Podcast was born. Now his mission is to help others identify, launch, and scale the businesses that will support their lives of abundance. Men of Abundance, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Brad Mulvey. Brad, welcome to Men of Abundance, brother. How you doing?
Wally, thanks for having me. I'm having a great day. Thank you.
Excellent. Where are you at in the world?
I'm in Cleveland, Ohio.
I have not been to Cleveland, Ohio yet. I have not been
sunny
really
Cleveland.
Midwest at all.
Yeah, you got to make it. Although I would recommend stick to the summer months when you're coming to the Midwest. It gets a little cold here in the winter.
I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that. I don't mind visiting cold weather. It's just living in it that's I have no desire to do that.
Sure.
I've done it before, so I know.
Okay, I'm one of these fools who grew up in the cold weather, and everywhere I've ever moved seemed just to follow it along. So I got to get smart and come out your way to Florida.
Well, the way I see it is as long as it's what you enjoy, I don't knock it. It's everybody, but I see people all the time, I can't, like Phoenix. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and people say, it's so damn hot here. I'm like, well, move. I mean, right. I don't live there anymore. I was born and raised there. Left, when I was 20. I haven't been back. Well, just to hang out. I was back there this June, actually. July and August. Just the wrong time to go to Phoenix.
People are just so ready to complain about stuff, and it's not like you don't know what you're getting every year in the winter or the summer in Phoenix's case. But yeah, people, they always have something that they can look to complain about.
That's a very good point. And one of the things that I've heard a couple times, I think I first heard it from Tony Robbins, is the number one addiction in the world, specifically in the United States. I can say that because I've lived here all my life, well, most of my life. I've lived other places. But is the number one addiction is our own problems. And we like to hold on to them. We call them our own. We tell everybody about them, especially when I start hanging around with some older folks. All they ever want to talk about is their new problem that they have. I'm like, really? This is what we've come to? Got really great things to talk about, man.
It's so true. And like even just in like day-to-day conversation and making small talk, it's so easy to go negative and just, find a mutual thing to complain about. And once I realized that, I probably heard it on a podcast or from somebody like Tony, and became aware of it. You just recognize it all the time, and you catch yourself doing it all the time, that it's just so much easier it's almost as humans, our default setting to go negative. So it takes a little bit of practice and training, but you can break that habit.
100% right, Brad. And that's why I have this Men of Abundance podcast, so that we can get the heck away from that scarcity mindset, complaining mindset, into a mindset of abundance. That being said, I like to start out with an attitude of gratitude. Man, what do you have to be grateful for today?
So much. I guess the top thing that's on my mind is my wife. She's 20 weeks pregnant, and just seeing what the female body goes through during that time period, it'll be our first one, is pretty amazing. And so I'm grateful for her, and she's going to be a great mom, but everything that she's going through now to help grow our family.
Absolutely. That is a huge blessing. And I have to say, my wife and I were literally having kind of a similar conversation last night, just because of the things women have to go through. And I was like, man, could you imagine if men had to go through that? And she's like, you would just be crying all the damn time. It's true. Yeah. It's absolutely true.
I'd be such a baby about it.
Oh, man, don't even get me started. We're blessed just to be men.
I agree with that. The female gender is a tough group over there.
They're tough. They are tough. Absolutely, without a doubt, man. So one of the things, I talked a little bit about you professionally, and shared some stuff in your bio. But like I said, that's all the cool stuff you're doing, all the professional stuff. Here at Men of Abundance, we like to get to know the man behind the abundance. So if you would, how would you describe yourself?
Yeah, so I think of myself as just the eternal optimist, and it probably drives my wife crazy at times. Just trying to always look for the positive in situations, and Also just a man of action. And sometimes it's not the right action, but one of my pet peeves is when, people talking about complaining again, people will complain about the situation that they find themselves in and then do nothing about it. And so that's something that I've seen a lot around me in my personal life. And so pretty early on, I realized I didn't want to be that person. If there's something that I had in my life that I didn't like, I would try to do something about it. Like I said, I don't always take the right action, but I try to take some sort of action to at least try to get the situation right. So that's a man of action and a lot of positivity coming from my end of the court.
Yeah, of all the action that you could take, that's the worst action you could take is no action.
Right.
For sure. And I dig that. I really like that mentality to do that. One of the things that I used to do when I was, worked a lot more with people, and even as I work with people that I'm working with now, if they come to me with a problem, I want them to come to me with 3 possible solutions. They could be completely just out there, but you got to have 3 possible solutions because that gets the mind to think that, this is an issue. And sometimes there's not always a solution. You just got to push through it, but at least try to come up with something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Throughout my career, I've worked in a number of different client-facing roles, whether that be sales or whether that be working with coaching clients or something like that. And things come up when you're working with people inevitably. Shit's going to hit the fan and that it's going to happen. But having that attitude, like you talk about, coming with a solution when there is an issue makes all the difference in the world. I know when somebody comes to me with a problem, but already has thought through, okay, made a mistake or something came up, but here's how I think we can go about trying to fix it. That is such a stronger position to take than just coming to a situation with, here's where we're at. Didn't go the way we had hoped. Now I don't know what to do. And it's just a slight tweak in the way you do things, but it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And you're absolutely correct. Again, it just, stuff always is always going to happen. Something is always going to go wrong. And that's what we do on a daily basis. That's part of growing as people and as men is we solve problems. And if any, that's one of the things, the downfalls of men, quite frankly, when it comes to relationships with women is we always want to solve the problem. And there's not always a problem. They just need to be heard. I don't want to get this whole conversation into, men communicating with women and stuff, but it's a fact. I can speak for myself anyway. I'm always trying to find a solution to issues, and there's not always, like I said, there's not always a solution. Sometimes you just gotta listen through it and kind of live through it.
Yeah, I grew up with 2 brothers, no sisters, and so that's a lesson that I keep learning over and over again with my wife. Sometimes she just wants to be heard, doesn't necessarily want me to do anything about it. So I feel you on that one, brother. Absolutely.
Yeah. In 27 years of marriage, I think I would think I've got it figured out. And then something else comes up and I'm like, really? Just happened this weekend. I kid you not. I promise you it just happened this weekend. I was like, what is she so mad about? Oh, okay. Now I get it. Yeah. All right. Well, note taken.
So you're saying I'm 1 year into marriage, so you're saying I've got no end in sight to my stupidity when it comes to relationships.
No, sir.
All right.
We will continue being stupid about it and just deal with it.
Yep.
So one of the other questions that I like to get into, and it gets kind of deep with some people, and the deeper the better, because it doesn't matter where you're at in life. We all have kick in the gut moments, and it's what we do with that experience that kind of dictates where we lead our life, where we go, and makes huge changes. Sometimes it's what actually encourages us, or is the what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, makes us make the change, makes us get off our butt and take action when we've been wanting to. So, if you would share with us a kick in the gut moment and really make us feel that.
Yeah. So for me, when you talk about that, one particular kind of period of my life comes to mind. And this was probably about 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And I was working at a job that was about an hour commute each way. And I was driving, so 2 hours in the car every day. And it was a job where I felt unfulfilled, unpaid or underpaid, and just like I had so much unmet potential within me. And so I just remember being in the car, sitting in traffic one day on the way to this job where I just look in the rearview mirror and make eye contact with myself and just think like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I knew coming out of school and I had these dreams and I knew that I was going to do something big. It was just feeling inside of me. And I looked at my life and I was like, I'm not doing it right now. Like it's a good job, you know, it's steady. But I'm not challenged. I'm not making a difference in people's lives. I'm not providing the life that I want to for my family and setting my future family up for the opportunities that I wanted to. And so that was kind of the low point of I'm just sitting there and thinking, well, I don't know what to do about it. I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of a man of action. And so that was a hard point for me to come to that realization and then try to figure out where to go from there when there was not really any immediate prospects in sight. So that was probably my kick in the gut moment.
So there's a group of guys out there, and I would put myself in that category at one point in my life, that I would say something to you being at your age and say, you know what, Brad, suck it up, dude. You haven't lived life long enough. You haven't experienced enough to have a fulfilled life. What do you say to that?
Mm-hmm. So I think it's good advice, but I think so I've gotten out of that spot now and talking about the concept of action. I think that when you find yourself in that position and kind of what I learned from that is that, all right, that's where you're at now. That's not where you have to be. And you might feel stuck for a little while, but what changes can you make in your life to start to work out of that? And that's really what inspired me to start a podcast and start building a business. So without getting into that spot, I don't know that I would have felt the pressure to actually step out of my comfort zone and start building a business, start the podcast that eventually led to building a business. It was just a side project at first. And so I think you're right. I think you have to be patient and you have to experience life and you have to go through those moments and you have to gain that experience that's going to allow you to achieve the things that will ultimately lead to fulfillment. But you can't sit in that position and just wallow in it for too long. You got to start taking some sort of action, start doing something that has the potential to lead you out of it, and just take things into your own hands and not just accept what situation life has offered you.
Yeah, I like that answer. And I will go as far as saying, you know, congrats to you. I give you kudos for making that decision, and many others where you're at in your world and at your age are doing that as well. And when I say that, when I ask that question, I say it from a mindset from much older guys, even older than myself. I'm 50, who still are doing the same thing over and over again that they haven't liked since their 20s. But they come from a generation that it's just what you do. You know, you just, there's no other way. It's just what you've been taught. It's the industrial age still hanging on. And, you know, that's just life. That's just the way you got to go forward with it. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think back to that same job that I was in at the time. And one of the things that really freaked me out was looking around and seeing folks who had been in the same role for 20, 30 years, where life is happening around them, but they haven't really changed much of what they were doing, what they were headed, what opportunities were offered to them because they were just complacent or comfortable or just kind of sticking to it. And frankly, that just freaked me out. I saw that and I was like, well, is that what, the 30-year-old future Brad is going to be, or 30-year future version of myself is going to be doing? Just the same thing, sitting in the same desk, looking at a computer, working on the same, mundane type tasks that I'm doing now. And that was one of those things that probably scared me into action more than anything else, was the fear of not living up to some greater potential.
Right. And now when you say greater potential, define that for us, because I really just want to kind of hear from you. What do you see in that as far as greater potential? What does that mean to you?
That's a great question. And for me, I always had a confidence, and I don't know if it was a just confidence, but in myself, that I was going to do something with my life that was meaningful, impactful for others, but also provided a great life for my family, afforded me the opportunities to take my kids places, to give them just a wonderful life. And that's when I think about living up to my potential, those are the type of things that I think about. It's kind of that legacy piece of, okay, what can I do for others that people will remember me by at the end of my life, in terms of the impact I was able to have on them? Am I able to help other people achieve things? And that's my kids. That's people that might be friends and family. But I always had this sense that there would be a greater purpose, a greater sense of service that I was offering to the world, and that the work I spent my efforts on and I focused on would have an impact on other people, and wouldn't just be, making more money for another corporation, which the early part of my career, that's what it felt like was happening. So that's where my mind goes when I think about potential. And it's really that helping other people and helping people to achieve their dreams even.
Brother, I absolutely love that. And see, it sounds corny. It just warms my heart, because it's just another reason why I love working. I got to give a shout out to Tom and Karen Schwab out at Interview Valet and their entire team out there, because that's who introduced the two of us. They know exactly the people that I like to have conversations with for Men of Abundance. Yeah. And this is it right here, man. Because too many people are out there, they're saying, well, they're looking for validation from their friends, and some of them aren't even their friends. They're just people on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Now TikTok, everybody wants validation on TikTok, and I watch TikTok. I'm a user. I'm a what do you call it? I'm a watcher. I don't really put content on there just yet. But I say that because so many people are after materialistic stuff and validation from other people. And it's just the wrong thing to go after, and you got it dialed in, man. Yeah,
and it's tough. I won't pretend that I have the perfect mindset or perspective when it comes to that. And I think like a perfect example, we were out to grab dinner this past weekend with some good friends of ours, and one of my friend who I've known since college shared how he just turned down a job offer to make $300,000 a year. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, dang, dude, like, what are you doing that you're turning down that type of job offer? And it makes me then turn the mirror on myself and say, well, what am I doing? That, like, am I on the right path? But it has to come back to, that your overall why and what you're looking to accomplish with your life. And actually, I don't mean to make it sound negative at all, because I think that my friend turned it down because he has a good sense of his purpose and his why. But I think that it's so easy to look at those type of situations and turn it on yourself and say, well, why am I not affording, or why don't I have those opportunities? Why is that not coming my way? Why have I not put myself in a position for that? And it's not just with money, but it could be, especially I know a big thing with my generation, the millennials, is, going on social media and see people taking trips, and you're like, man, how are they? It seems like they're in Europe every other week. Like, what's going on there? And it's all of those things that pop up. And oftentimes it's just one-off examples, but you see it over and over through your news feed or whatever you're looking at. And it's hard to stay on track and keep that perspective of, well, I'm doing this because I have a greater purpose for my life that I want to serve. And if you hold true to that and you're serving other people, odds are the financial returns will come your way as long as you stay faithful to it. But it's a hard perspective to maintain.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was Jim Rohn. I was getting mixed up between Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar, but I'm pretty sure it was Jim Rohn that said, help enough people get what they want and you'll have more than what you want in life. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically the gist of what you just said.
Right. Yeah, it's a great quote.
Yeah, and guys, watching people on social media and stuff, I always have this other saying, compare and despair. You don't know what's going on in their life, man. I mean, look at somebody like Robin Williams or Anthony Bourdain. I always wanted to be Anthony Bourdain. I mean, who doesn't want to travel the world, meet amazing people, have the most amazing conversations, and eat great food? Or some of it wasn't that great. Didn't look that great to me anyway. But, you get my point. I mean, but then you don't know what's going on in that dude's mind and what's going on in his life. And you don't know what's going on in these other people's lives. They might be over leveraged. They're stressed the hell out. You just don't know what the heck's going on. So live your life. Add value to people in your immediate family, your friends, your community, and at some point get duly compensated for that and just live, man.
Yeah. I think that expectations can be the thief of happiness sometimes if you look at that stuff and all you're doing is comparing it to your situation and setting expectations on your life to have somebody else's highlight reel. So it's definitely tricky waters to navigate in today's day and age, but you're right. Just living in the moment and living your life and enjoying what you've got. And I love that we started this podcast off with gratitude because that's, the number one tool that I know of to really ground you and enjoy your life.
Absolutely, man. None of it works without gratitude and without giving back and just having the whole gratitude and everything you already have. Because if you're not happy with what you already have, you're not going to be happy with anything else you get in life either. So let's get in. I want to get into, your Millennial Mastermind. I've been listening to it and I love it. Matter of fact, your last guest has been one of I think like 3 people have been on my show twice. Aaron Walker's one of them.
Oh, yeah.
Big A. Absolutely
Big A.
love that man. And I got a chance to sit down with him face-to-face at PodFest last year as well. Where did this all come from? How did you decide you already talked about getting the podcast started, but why the podcast? And that's where it kind of led into your business, right? Yeah,
and so it did stem from that 2 hours of commuting daily when I was at that job that just wasn't fulfilling, and that I live in Cleveland, Ohio, so you can only listen to so much sports radio before you're ready to drive off the highway. But that's where I discovered podcasts. It was during that drive, and so it's one of those blessings when you look at the things that didn't seem to be going right in your life, opens up doors to other opportunities. And so I discovered this world of podcasting, and I discovered all these entrepreneurship-based podcasts and personal development podcasts, and I loved it. Immediately I was addicted, and I went down the rabbit hole of listening to podcasts at 2 times speed and just seeing how much content I can consume. And it got to the point where I don't think I was actually taking anything away from these. I was just trying to cram in as much content as possible. But what I started to realize was that it's great to consume this content, but I needed to take some sort of action on what I was hearing, and getting back to that concept of action. But B, nobody was talking about these concepts I was really enjoying learning about, these entrepreneurial concepts, a lot of things like mindfulness and meditation and mindsets and all these lessons I was taking in, but from the perspective of somebody who was a young professional who wanted to go down that route, just didn't know what that looked like for them, didn't have clarity on what their future looked like. And so that's when I decided to give it a shot. Found out that you can start one of these things pretty inexpensively. And so got a domain name and set up the podcast, and a couple months later was publishing the first episode. And that was about 3.5 years ago now, which is just kind of a crazy time frame to reflect back on.
Yeah,
that's the origin.
Years. That's about where mine's at too. And it's just interesting how it all got started. But yeah, I totally get that. I'm right on the same journey with you. And this show actually evolved into a business I had I wouldn't say no desire. I just had no idea it was going to go into that. I was just having these amazing conversations with guys like yourself who are living their life of abundance and somehow paying it forward in the world. And because I just knew there were other guys out there. That just created an audience, and it just took on a life of its own. So congrats to you, man. That's freaking awesome. So what are some good news stories that are coming out of the business side of what you've been doing? Because, looking through your lineup of all your guests, super impressive, man. You just had some amazing conversations, and I'm like you. I could say that I want to sit here and binge on all of these, but you've only got so much time in the day, and I don't commute anymore, so my listening time has been greatly diminished.
Yeah. So some of the good news stories, I think for me, it's been the cool thing and what's evolved is the business side of this that we're still figuring out, if I'm being honest, but is bringing together the audience. And what we've done is create a community of individuals who are interested in creating information-based businesses. And so that's people who are starting podcasts and who have YouTube channels and things like that want to create a business that can support their life. And I think the Men of Abundance really closely resonates with me because I am a big believer in creating a life of abundance based on your talents and based on the information that you can spread. And so the win has been seeing people be able to go out there, and I've helped a number of people now create their own podcasts and start to have revenue streams come from that and income streams from just sharing things that they're passionate about. And being able to watch, friends and strangers and who are now friends go out and do this and start contributing in their own way to communities that they're passionate about serving and providing information to and really just helping at the end of the day is really rewarding for me. So that's the biggest thing, is seeing people go out there and give back in their own way and use their talents and their treasure in a way that's impacting other people and just has this ripple effect, this butterfly effect that you never know, who you might help that then ultimately is going to help thousands or even more people. So it's really cool to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Both the analogies I was thinking of, you just mentioned the ripple and the butterfly. I love it, man. Brilliant minds think alike. We obviously,
yes, sir. Yes,
I mean,
sir.
obviously, I'm looking through looking through your list. Rock Thomas, Aaron Walker again, Jeff Woods. Jeff Woods was one of my earliest guests. Who actually I had a conversation with Jay Papasan, the co-author of The One Thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Before Jeff, yeah, I connected with Jay on Twitter, and he's like, Men of Abundance, hell yeah, let's make that happen. Then they pulled a trick on me when I went to talk with Jeff, but that's in the episode. But anyhow, yeah, great stuff, man.
That's funny. Yeah, Jeff was my first guest, so listening to his old show before he got hooked up with The One Thing,
right?
Was the mentee. That was one of the inspirations for me to start my podcast. So small world, but yeah.
The mentee was great. And then I was there during the whole transition when he was moving it over and handing it over to, I forget who it was, he handed it over to, and had that whole competition and all that stuff. And then, I don't know, just to me, it was like I was there for Jeff kind of thing.
Yeah, I fell off a little bit at that point too.
Yeah, I listened for a little bit. I gave it a chance, but anyhow, and then that was about the time I had to start toning down how many podcasts I was listening to and audiobooks and whatnot. Anyhow,
yeah.
So yeah, good stuff, man. Obviously, some great conversations that we've had and amazing connections to boot that we've been able to connect so many other people with. It's just the whole ecosystem, the whole everybody in the podcasting world, just to me, have just been amazing people.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's people who are all super passionate about something, about whatever they're sharing and talking about. So it's a cool world to be part of.
It truly is. So, brother, we're at the point where we're going to pay it forward. You ready to do that?
Let's do it.
Excellent. So share 1 to 3 actionable steps that Men of Abundance can take today.
I'm a firm believer that one of the most important things that you can change in your life to change the trajectory of where you're headed and just change your mindset and everything about your life is by surrounding yourself with people who inspire you and make you a better man and a better person. And so my number one step would just be to look at your inner circle, and this goes back to the Jeff Woods days of talking about mentors and who you spend the most time with. And I'm imagining that your listeners have probably heard the quote, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." And
for sure,
really take some time to reflect on that. Who are the 5 people you're closest to? And are those people who are really, helping you live a better life, people that you want to modulate in your life and that you aspire to be like? And if not, take some time to start thinking about how you can connect with people who do inspire you and who are doing things that, push you to be better. And I think one simple way to go about doing that is just to reach out talk to the folks who you do know who inspire you and say, hey, I really appreciate you as a person, as a friend or a family member, whatever it is. Who else do you know in your life that you think would be a good person for me to know? And usually those people are more than willing to make some introductions.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. If they're not going to put time into you themselves, they will introduce you to somebody who will give you the equivalent or close to it. Mentorship. That's been my experience anyway. And most of the time, you got to understand, guys, when you ask somebody like that, depending on who they are and where they're at in their life, everybody else is trying to get on their calendar as well. So you got to respect that, and you got to give something back as well. But I 100% agree with what you said, especially those of you who are sitting in a position that you want to get out of, and you're listening to the negativity all day long. If you're in a position where you can put on some headset, drown out all that background noise, and listen to something positive, listen to Men of Abundance, listen to Millennial Mindset, any number of other podcasts, books, you name it, that's out there. Get that stuff in your head and get push all the other stuff out. It will only do you great.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to necessarily be the mentors who you're reaching out in this situation too. It could be you might have somebody who you're close friends or even loose friends with who you look at and you go, man, that's an awesome guy there. I wish I could spend some more time with him. We'll make it happen. Mm-hmm. Or a lot of times the mentors who I'm connected with who have had the biggest impact in my life have been introduced to me by somebody who's more of just a peer, but just knew I was interested in being connected with entrepreneurial minded people. Then they make the introduction to that person. One conversation leads to another, and you never know what relationships can be born just from, those type of introductions.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
It sure is.
So what are some rituals that make the biggest impact in your life?
So I'm a big fan of physical exercise, just getting out there and doing some tough things. So this past weekend, I completed a Tough Mudder that I'd been training for a couple of months, and just make a regular habit of getting to the gym and going out for runs and things that challenge me on a regular basis. So when the inevitable challenging things in life do come up, you've got both a harder mindset and body that can help you get through that. That's a big piece of it. I'm also a big fan of meditation. It's one of those things that is easy to pass up on, or if your day is crazy, one of the easy things to cut out. But I've been trying really hard to make sure that that's a regular piece of my schedule, even if it's spending 5 minutes with my eyes closed in the car before I walk in the office, just finding the time to make it happen. And then having some designated time with those people who are the closest relationships in my life. So, my wife, making sure that, I know I'm going to be working hard and busting my butt, but that she gets the attention that she deserves from me as well, to make sure that relationship is always in a place it needs to be.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. So based on what we're talking about today, what would you recommend that our abundant leaders read or listen to, and why?
One book that I've read recently that really shook me up and challenged me was Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. I don't know if you've checked that one out, Wally.
As you were prefacing that, I was thinking of that very book.
Yeah.
I've listened to it a couple times, and I don't know about you, but I recommend listening to that one as opposed to just reading it.
So I just read it, but I've heard that he adds some commentary into the audio version, so I got to get around to listening to it. But even just reading it, that one, messed me up a little bit in a good way, and just helps you realize that you're capable of so much more than your mind tells you you are. So I recommend anybody checks that one out who needs a little boost.
When I say this, you'll totally relate. When I first listened to that book, and I do recommend listening to it because he puts so much more commentary into the audio version. It's a completely different experience. And I listen to much of it in the wintertime. And even here in Florida, it does get kind of cold, like 42 degrees, something like that. So I just felt obligated to listen to parts of it outside, even while I was sitting in the cold community pool.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I was reading it at a time when I wasn't doing much cardiovascular activity at all. Maybe I'd run like 2 or 3 miles in the last couple of months, and I just go out and run 6 miles because I'm so fired up about listening. It
just the book. Just listening to it just made me feel like I was just way too comfortable. Yeah, I just didn't deserve being that comfortable.
Yeah, it makes you feel soft for sure.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely, man. Well, thanks for sharing that. I definitely recommend that one, guys. Read or listen, but I definitely recommend you listening to it. What do you feel holds most people back from living a life of true abundance?
I think it's the fear of failure and just not trying things. We talked about it a little bit, but just having the willingness to, for me, this was the case, and sounds like maybe it may have been for you too, was just having the willingness to go out on a limb and start the podcast has opened up so many other doors and opportunities that I would never have discovered, conversations that never could have been had if it was just me reaching out to some of these folks asking for a cup of coffee or a phone call. And it's changed the trajectory of my life and my mindset especially. And so that's just one example, but I think that people they get too caught up on the fear of what happens if I fail, what will people think, things like that you got to try to put that aside and just go for it. And it's always worse in your mind than what it would actually be if something doesn't work out. So you just got to go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it right there. And most of the time, the fear stems from what will other people think. It's not a true fear of you actually doing what you want to do. You want to do that deed, whatever it is. Pick up the phone and call somebody, or ask that young lady out, or whatever the case may be. Ask for a raise at work, or ask for the new position at work that's going to put you ahead of your peers. It's not the act that you're afraid of generally. When you break it down, it's the act of, what are other people going to think of me? What are my coworkers going to think? What is my mom going to think? And man, I got to pull a Gary V on you and tell you, just let that shit go.
Yeah, sir.
They are nobody in your life when it all comes down to it. Ultimately, you got to live your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you got to think about what's the opportunity cost of not going for it too, in a way that Aaron Walker, or it may not have been Aaron Walker, but one of my recent guests put it was, if you think about the trajectory of your life and in that final year of your career. So say you go out and you start a business and it's successful, and that last year where you're just raking it in, what is that worth? Because every year you wait, that's the opportunity cost. Yeah, the first year you're working on something might not make the financial impact or may not have a huge success, but by waiting, you're putting off that last year, and that's the opportunity that you're losing. So think of it that way, and that was kind of a powerful way to frame it for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That actually sounds like something Aaron would say, and that's something that I use with my clients. So I just showed you how much you're going to make over the next 12 months to 5 years. The longer you wait, that's money down the drain.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it is very powerful. It really is, for you to consider that. So what does being a man of abundance mean to you?
For me, it's just taking a look at your life and being willing to put in effort to help other people achieve their dreams. That's what the Millennial Mastermind Podcast and all of the kind of spin-off businesses that have come from that are about is helping other people be more successful in their life. So, it doesn't even always have to be the most selfless of endeavors. It could be a business that you're building that is helping other people that does pay you back. But think about how much more meaningful your life is going to be when your efforts are around this idea of and this concept of helping other people get what they need and help them get through tough times and help them, make a better life for their family. That's what fires me up, and that's what being a man of abundance means to me.
Greatly appreciate that, man. And I want to see what your thoughts are on this because, when we talk about giving to others and doing for others, there's two huge contrast people that I use as an analogy in this, and it's real world actually. You've got Mother Teresa on one side who helped, thousands of people around the world and didn't, had no monetary, lifestyle, if you will. Where on the other side, you have Bill Gates, who probably actually and literally helps hundreds of thousands of people around the world, if not literally millions of people, quite frankly, and has a lot of monetary gain for that. You can be that, either one of those spectrums or anywhere in between, guys. The ultimate thing is what fulfills you the most. And now Bill and Melinda are doing things in the world. I mean, they're eradicating disease, for goodness sake. I mean, they're doing things around the world that some people couldn't even consider 10, 20 years ago. So consider that. Just think about that in your own life. What are your thoughts on that, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, the word that comes to mind is abundance. And so I think that it's an appropriate thought. And having abundance in terms of what you attract into your own life and what you create in your own life, but it also gives you the opportunity to have a greater impact. And, there's the probably overused example at this point of the Tom Shoes business model, those social business models where, anybody who wants to go out and start a nonprofit, I am all for that. That is, anybody who does that has a beautiful heart, and I think that that's an amazing thing. But I'm also a big fan of these businesses that are social enterprises that are really looking to make a difference based on some sort of cause. And I think that you can have such a huge impact by looking at the world that way of there's nothing wrong with making some money, but when you're doing that and also having an impact in the world and making some sort of social change, some positive impact in the world, that is just an incredible fuel for a business. And you talk about, what is your why with Simon Sinek? It's like if you have a why that is really that deeply rooted in making an impact in the world, your employees, yourself, your business is all going to be just fueled so strongly to succeed. And you talk about abundance, and man, that's it. Is just bringing in as many resources as possible and driving impact and change in the world.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I like the Tom Shoes is what I refer to as I actually learned it from Yannick Silver is a for-purpose business. And I much prefer that over, like I said, like you said, nonprofits are great as long as it's done for the right reason, truly for the right reason. But for purpose, I dig that too. And Yannick Silver actually has a book called Evolved Enterprise, which I highly recommend. And it talks about just that, building for purpose. And Tom Shoes was one example that he used out of that within that book. I got that here somewhere on my shelf. Anyhow, brother, amazing conversation. Thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for everything that you're doing, man. I dig it. We're going to close this up, but before we do, what did we not talk about that that you would like for our abundant listeners to get out of our conversation today, and how else can they get a hold of you?
I think we touched on it, but one thing I just really want to drive home is, if there's a pain point in your life right now, just think about what actions you can take and what effort you can start putting towards resolving that and getting through that challenge. And it doesn't always have to, it might not be the right action, but just start working on it. And, when I started the podcast, I didn't have perfect clarity of what it was going to end up being, of, who I was going to serve, all those things. That came with time and iteration, and just wherever you see that pain point, be willing to put some efforts at it and just take some positive actions and see where it might lead. In terms of where people can find me, they can check out the Millennial Mastermind Podcast. It's on any of your podcasting apps, millennialmm.com. And then for those folks who are interested in, building a business based on content and information, feel free to check out the Foundation Mastermind community. We're building something special over there too. So that's all at millennialmm.com.
Perfect. And I'll have that linked up in the show notes, guys. So don't worry about writing that down. It'll be there. You can go in there and click on that and go straight there if you're not in a place to write it down right now. Brad, again, thanks a lot, man. Keep paying it forward. You're doing amazing things, man. Go out and live your life of abundance.
Wally, thank you so much. You too, man. This is a great show. I love the concept. I love what you're doing here. So appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
That's all for today, Abundance Leaders. For more about our guests and the powerful information we shared with you today, be sure to sign up for our mailing list at menofabundance.com. We appreciate your time and look forward to hanging out with you on our next episode. So until then, be sure to pay it forward and live your life of abundance.